Well, good morning, Worksaholics. My name is Russ Fitzpatrick. I'm one of the founders of the AnnieMac Works Productivity Platform, nationally sponsored by AnnieMac Home Mortgage. It's our pleasure and our privilege to have any level of leadership in your career path. But this session that we're going to go through today, Axel, is the fourth module of our business planning month. Now, some of you online right here, right now, are saying something like, do you really need a whole month to business plan, Fitzy? And I would answer the question that for us, after 3 decades of observation and watching young, hungry Florida State graduates come into the real estate business with a wagging tail and a poof of enthusiasm and excitement, and then watching them flounder for 3, 4, 5 months at a time, or watching a retiree who's displaced from the technology industry, or watching a mom who's raised her kids come into the real estate business, you have to understand that I've watched thousands upon thousands of residential real estate agents come in, starve, and leave the real estate business. So if I cannot cram 3 decades of residential real estate experience into 45 minutes, then we elect to do that in 4 sessions. And the 4 sessions are in front of you right now. Evolution of Efficiency was about 2 weeks ago, 15 Best Sources of Business for 2016, and they build on each other. So if you're coming into this course today with the first time you're being in here, just please understand that this is the culmination of the 4th session, and you need to go back to the on-demand library at AnnieMac Works or Associate Works. And I mentioned just a few minutes ago that session will be uploaded later today. So when we put the ball back in Barbara Kaufman's court, or we put the ball back in Brian's court, we say something to him like, hey pal, it's your move. Should you change your desire, or you should change the tasks that you're doing to meet your desire? You decide. It has nothing to do with us. Are you going to say, well, I came in thinking I'd make $100,000, but I really need to lower that to $40,000? Or should you simply change the tasks that you're doing from the minute you wake up in the morning to the minute you go to sleep at night? The source of business charting formula is very well proven, and on Monday this week we went through what looks like a layer cake or a pyramid-ish graph. And it says that no one source of business that you manage needs to be extraordinary at all. But instead, you should manage a couple of sources of business, maybe 4 or 5 sources of business, that you are confident that the results that you're projecting are probable and likely. So let's look at the 3rd tier up on your screen. It says a geographic farm area. Well, my buddy who's online today went and farmed Pine Ridge once. Pine Ridge is a 700 home farm where the average property is $400,000. Average sale is $12,000 in his pocket. And in mid-November, he did some door hangers. Lo and behold, he doesn't have a Pine Ridge private Facebook group. He doesn't have a website called pineridgehomeowners.com. He hasn't done a direct mailer to them. He hasn't sent them holiday cards. He hasn't created a social media boosted ad that features Pine Ridge in it. These are the things that are featured on Farming Fridays, and he's done none of them. But he says he wants to make $100,000, but he hasn't done any of the things that are taught in Farming Fridays. So Pine Ridge sits unfarmed and no production comes out of it. What we're recommending to this young man is that he looks at Pine Ridge like a little business plan, and he says, hey, if I do my tasks, I might sell 3 houses out of Pine Ridge during the next 12 months. Some of you just about. Did you ever hear that thing? I just threw up a little bit. Because some of you just did. You said, what? I'm going to farm an area for a whole year, and I'm going to do 3 sales. Well, that's sad. That's pathetic. That's not even, that's underwhelming, Russ, and I'm not gonna accept that. Well, the reason we came up with that math, because in that farm, 30 houses have sold year to date, and we're projecting 10% capture rate of the listings in the first year of the farm. Second year, 15%. Third year, 20%. If you are pragmatic in your business decision, then you accept that the beginning of a farm doesn't pay as large a dividends as the end of a farm. You realize that residential real estate is that mountain you're pushing the boulder up, and that the first 6 months or a year are a little less lucrative than the second 6 months or the second year. Does that make sense to you as a business person? If it does, text in amen, because I'm in the environment that some realtors think that if they do door hangers once, they get a $12,000 check. Well, that's not the reality of residential real estate. So cramming 30 years of residential real estate experience, the first thing I want to point out is that third tier up. The third tier up on your layer cake says, as a part of a larger business plan with multiple sources of business, my geographic farm area is going to bring in $16,500. Well, in his case, in Pine Ridge, it would actually be 3 times $400,000, so that would be $36,000 from one source in his farm area. The reason I enunciate that is because this particular victim is online right now, and I wanted him to hear me say to him, and hopefully his stepfather's sitting with him, so that I can enunciate that he's doing none of the tasks that are associated with farming inside of his geographic farm called Pine Ridge. Therefore, he's got none of the money that would have come out of it. Is that fair? If I was his boss, would I be able to say that to him or to you? When you look at Craigslist as a source of business, there is a crawl, walk, run business plan that centers around this particular source of business. So many of you are online right now going, well, Craigslist is so bad, I'll never use it, it's dumb, don't even talk to me about it. I get it, okay, so maybe that's not one of your sources of business. So you could put the word in open houses, where we're currently putting in the word Craigslist, and you could still build a business plan around that source of business. But for hypothetical purposes, let's say that the crawl, do you remember when my buddy from Pine Ridge did a Craigslist ad once? About November 1 or 5, he did a Craigslist ad, and he says, I didn't get any calls. Well, that's probably the quality of the ad that he ran, but 3 ads posted per week equals 12 posted per month. Maximize your screen on the top right-hand side if you can't read the small print. 36 posts per quarter equals 144 posts per year. If I post 144 times on Craigslist down the left-hand side with the infant who's crawling, I'm expecting a few calls per week, a few calls per quarter, and a few calls per year. But I'm certainly not expecting that all of those calls buy houses, am I? Instead, I'm expecting that I can qualify about 20 or 30 of them per year, and at the end of the year, I might be able to sell 4 houses. Benwell Esch in Lancaster, Pennsylvania says, amen. See, what amen means to me is these guys have done it before. They realize that in residential real estate, you don't put an ad in on a Wednesday and sell a house on a Thursday. What you do is you put a lot of ads in with consistent, predictable, repetitious involvement, and you do that without regard to the result. What we do instead is we manage the tasks, not the results. Therefore, if you were hoping to walk on Craigslist, you might put 6 ads in a week. 24 a month, 72, 288, and instead of selling 4, you might sell 8 for the whole calendar year, and if they average $5,500, that's $44,000 from that one source of business. You look at somebody who runs, they're probably going to use a software program called Listings to Leads, or they may use a software program called Post Your Listing, or they may actually just use the My Work Suite program that's provided for you for free. But whether you use Listings to Leads or Post Your Listings or like a listing booster program, or if you use a program like a Craigslist loader that's on My Work Suite, you might be able to post more ads per week because you've got some technology on your side, and reposting them is easier. So here you go. Let's run on Craigslist. If Brian P. in Florida was doing 12 ads a week, every week, then he'd be doing 48 a month, 144 per quarter. That's 576 posts on Facebook per year. If you were Helen Keller, deaf, dumb, and blind, you would still bump into a good 50 or 100 qualified consumers. And out of those consumers, you would look to be converting about 1.5%, 2.5%, 3% of the total to qualified, and then from the qualified, about a 10%, maybe even a 15% conversion to a contract. That means 90% of the people who are qualified to buy a house will not buy a house from you, and that 90% of the people that call on you will not even go qualified with you. So you've got a 90% attrition rate at each level of the experience, but it still results in about, on that map, 82,500. Do you think that if Elva, Elva looks like she might have a Greek last name, but I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But if Elva, all she did was post on Craigslist every day, do you think she could make $90,000 a year out of Craigslist? I'm going to tell you absolutely 100% yes, she can. And my friend Stephen Forbes in Sarasota, Florida does that. Much greater than that, actually. He does much more than $90,000 a year from Craigslist. Now, another business plan that we articulate in the Source of Business conversation as a hypothetical only is, instead of saying the words that you're going to have a past customer and sphere of influence campaign, that you actually make a reasonable projection of how many homes that you're going to sell from your past customers and your sphere of influence, and how much gross commission you expect will come out of that source of business for the coming calendar year. But all that fine print below, you know what that is? Those are the tasks. Those are what you have to do in the proactive marketing towards your past customer and sphere of influence to ensure that you're going to get 10 or 12 or 15 consumers to contact you so that you can guarantee yourself 5 closings. Now, there are people in the business that make $100,000 a year without doing business planning, but those people are so talented that they should be making $200,000, but because they don't business plan, they're making $100,000. When you start to business plan, you start to see where the opportunities you're missing, and you start to see the accountabilities that you're missing, and it starts to guilt you in to doing something. So as we go back to farming, we might say that farming is only good for 3, and it's only good for 16.7. But in Pine Ridge, it would have been good for 3, which would have equaled, in fact, $36,000. In the farm, right? But my good friend Brian didn't like me talking about him, so he logged off and left. But I'm happy that he did, because I think it's time that he goes and waits tables, because he's been a realtor now for 4 months and he's not doing any work. So I called him out on it on here. Although you guys couldn't see him, you don't know who he is. I would never do that to somebody personally and embarrass them in front of other people. But I'm very happy to call a spade and let you know that unless you take action, you are not going to make any money. But as we went down those sources of business and we go to source 3, source 4, we start to discover that there is a trend called source of business charting, and in fact source of business accountability that I want to share with you. Now, I want to spend a few minutes with you going back in time to my first days in residential real estate. I hope you don't find this to be a waste of your time, but I'm going to have a little fun with you. I've been in real estate for almost just at 30 years this January. And so I put this little cute picture of me when I graduated from real estate school, because I must have been 6. And then in 1986, I went to work for a company called Prudential White's Realty in Coral Springs, Florida. And that's a good long ways ago, right? When I was 19 years old, I wrote a little workbook called How to Present Your Home for Sale. And it walked the seller through all their steps that they'd have to analyze if they were going to achieve the highest possible price. And I actually copywrote it, and it was called Your Step-by-Step Guide to Achieving the Highest Possible Price. And I would use this workbook to give to sellers who had expired or who had listed their home by owner without an agent. And there was a little commercial about me on the back, and of course my phone numbers, and that was my cute little Kevin Bacon looking picture from back in Prudential in 1989. Why I share that with you is that one of the problems with all that ambition, and one of the problems with all that drive, and some of you are guilty of this same disease, is that when I'm at home, I felt like I had to be at work. And because I had, or you may have, a sense of ambition or a sense of not enough or a sense that you're not doing everything you should be doing, then when you're at home, you may actually feel like you should be at work. And when you're at work, you feel like you should be at home. That's a terrible dilemma that causes people to eat Prozac and Xanax. Well, the problem with all that drive is that there was no result that ever quenched my definition of good enough. So if I had made $70,000 that year, ultimately I knew that I could have made 80. And what that did is it filled my heart. It filled my adrenaline with a particular type of anxiety that was not healthy for me. So I think ambition is a double-edged sword. It cuts one way towards achievement, but it cuts another way if you don't find balance in your life against your health or your mental health, and it creates anxiety. But in actuality, how it felt on a given Thursday was that if a buyer owner listed their house with someone else, I took it like a loss. Like I took it like I did something wrong, and I beat myself up about it. And if an expired listing that I had been prospecting, listed with someone else, I would take it so personally. Some of you don't have the disease that bad, but you might relate to what I'm talking about. And what I learned over the first decade that I was in residential real estate business is that, it was okay if I didn't call the expireds for a day or two. It was okay if a buyer owner listed with someone else, as long as I had a business plan and I stuck to it. What was happening is I was creating an environment for myself that I was always anxious and unsettled, and I never felt like I was successful, even if I made more money. So essentially the summary here, the takeaway, and some of you are experiencing this right now in your business world, you might be playing golf without a par. So imagine you tee up at a 400-yard hole, and there's no par indicated on that hole. So you don't know if you have 5 strokes to get it in the bucket or 3 strokes to get it in the bucket, because a par 3 is usually about 180, 200 yards, and a par 5 is usually about 500 yards, but you're not sure if this 400-yard hole is a 4 or a 5. Well, if you go out and shoot a 4, you don't know if you did well or not. And if you shoot a 5, you don't know well if you did know or not. Well, that's how it is in residential real estate without a business plan. You go out into the field for 12 months. You quite simply extend effort in whatever level you deem appropriate. And then at the end of the calendar, you get a 1099 that reads something. But you don't know if that was par, or if it was an eagle, or if it was a bogey. You don't know if you did well or poorly based on any plan, because you don't have a written business plan to speak of. I felt like I had to say yes to every opportunity because I wasn't managing sources of business. What I was managing is Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, Mr. Martin, Mrs. Fitzpatrick. And I was managing these customers. I felt good about it. But imagine if you quit managing customers and you started managing sources of business and an actual business plan. So I'm going to show you what it feels like when you manage sources of business rather than customers. You start to realize that no one client, no one buyer, no one listing determines your fate. You realize that you don't any longer have to chase every opportunity. You don't have to prospect every day. You can take days off. You can go be with your kids. You can breathe, because now you're managing sources of business that have particular benchmarks rather than managing customers. You can calmly spin plates with purpose and confidence. And I know this is a little sophomoric, but I'm going to share with you that each plate that you're spinning doesn't produce an extraordinary result at all, but instead it produces a result that is ordinary and that is probable and likely comparative to your efforts. So you start to spin these plates, and let's say it's 4 sources of business, then all you have to do is go back to the plate and put a little more effort in, and that's how you start to breathe easy. Put down the Prozac, put down the Xanax, put down the meditation rituals that try to keep you grounded because you're so stressed out, and you start to realize that you're in personal control of your business, and that no one client dictates your fate. That's a very, very comfortable place to be in the residential real estate business. So I'm going to show you one of the very, very first source of business charts that I started to work in 1994. My average price point was about 130, 140, and you could see how it played out. This was a very, very rudimentary document, but it was mine. And I wrote out for myself that I was going to do $2 million a year in closings. And at the end of a calendar year, guess what I hit? Par. 2,004,500. Now, there are people online right now that are going, oh, I could do $2 million in my sleep. That's so pathetic. And there's other people that are going, you know what? $2 million makes 60. Pay my broker. I'm making a decent living, and that's pretty good for a 25-year-old kid or whatever it was at the time. Whether your goal is 4 million or 6 million or 9 million, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is that you understand the concept of source of business charting. So if you look on the very bottom, and if you maximize your screenshot, you'll see that personal referral business made up a 4 transaction goal, and it turned into 5. That farm area on the bottom, second to the left, measured up to a 4 transaction goal, and I actually did just above it. My FSBOs, I was a little lazy that year. I hoped to do 400,000 for FSBOs, but I only did like 360. But do you see, because my personal sphere of influence outperformed, I actually still hit my goal. I missed on my expireds. I only ended up closing 3 expireds, and they were lower priced than what I had hoped. So I only totaled 214 for the year from expireds. I had a company referral at 114 and 130. Those were leads from the company. And look at me, I only projected about 100 from the company referrals. And then all the way to the right, I had a little teeny source called Other Sources, which was miscellaneous. And lo and behold, I did a couple there. So at the end of the calendar year, I had done $2 million plus 4,500. Now look down the left on the top where it says February 1. I think it says May 1. What I was doing is I was measuring throughout the calendar year whether I was on track or whether I was off track to hit my goals. This is essential to great business managers in all industries, that they do some sort of a projection, right? And that those projections are met. Now, I could only find this one, which was about halfway through the calendar year, because this is the last year that I didn't go to electronic. And if you look at a $4.8 million goal, look just before this, a couple years before, my goal was to do 2 million, 95, right? And then here we are going into 97, and my goal was to do 4.8 million. Well, 4.8 million for a kid in his 20s is pretty damn sexy. Okay, I promise you, that's not a bad way to make a living when you're 25, 27, driving a cute little convertible around Fort Lauderdale. I did okay for myself. Well, that vehicle, that plan that I put in place was a little bit more complex than the $2 million plan. In other words, I started to understand how firefighters and police played into my life through a program called Hero Home Source. I started to understand how my church might affect my income. I got a little bit more ritualistic about door hangers and door knocking. I had a better personal referral plan together, with my sphere of influence. Fifth from the bottom right, you could see a huge surprise came into my world at this point in 97, where one of my leads from the company actually jumped up and bought a $530,000 house. That was pretty sexy. My FSBOs and my expireds, my sign and ad calls, St. Thomas Aquinas, the high school I went to, and a partnership with another realtor were all going to manifest themselves. But the point here isn't my goals, it's the recording of the goals and the measuring of the achievement of those goals on a regular basis. So now we refer to this particular type of graph called our layer cake graph, which is a great graph to use for source of business charting. We also give you the opportunity on AnnieMac Works to utilize our templates for free to discuss and discover where your convictions lie. Now, this is a business plan that's, relatively rudimentary. There's just 5 small sources of business on here, and ultimately geographic farm area, the Craigslist, the associate level personal referrals, prospecting expireds, and prospecting by owners. This is very, very small production from each source of business, but I don't know if you feel it, but I feel a calmness that comes over my relationship to my business when I go, wow, it doesn't look that hard. I only have to do 3 sales from expireds for the whole year. I only have to do 4 from my geographic farm area for the whole year. What we're doing here, guys, and this is the 4th module of Business Planning Month. So what I want to confide in you is that the level of anxiety that I had created for myself in residential real estate because I was so ambitious was not sustainable, and it was not healthy. And the only way that I could envision a sustainable, healthy level of production long term was to begin to manage these sources of business. Now, one of my good friends is one of the top realtors in Berkshire Hathaway nationally, and he and I have gone for a couple of walks lately. And I want to show you the plan that I created for this guy 12 or 14 years ago. I can't see the date. I think it says 11, so not that long ago. I guess it was 5 years ago. So sometimes I have a time-space continuum issue. But when you look at how complex his plan was, he actually was managing 6, 9, 10 different sources of business. Believe me, this kid is ambitious. Last year he made just over $500,000 or $600,000, and we're building his business plan for 2016 right now, and he wants 7 figures. His conviction is, I've got all the knowledge, I've got all the experience, I need some good technology, I need a team, and I can do 7 digits in real estate. Well, because he manages source of business, it's very easy for us to work together and understand his strengths and weaknesses of his plan. Imagine if he just arbitrarily stated that he was going to do $1 million. From where? What, you're going to convert 240 expireds? Are you going to do 300 by owners? I mean, what the heck are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to do $1 million? So on AnnieMac Works, in the on-demand library, you can go in and download this electronic dashboard, and it's called the Business Planning Template. I promise you that all 4 modules from this week, from this month, will be on there, and the toolbox will be complete with all these pieces so that you can reference them. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to look at a bird's eye view of multiple sources of business, and then to articulate to yourself more than anything else what you believe would be probable and likely in each source of business. And if you need our help, we're happy to help. AssociateWorks.com business planning houses all this stuff, but it's also going to be available within the day or first thing tomorrow on AnnieMacWorks.com in the on-demand library. So now we went back a week, 3 weeks ago when we first started Business Planning Month, and we said you need some desire, and then you need to build in some accountability to help you stick to what it is you promise yourself. So what I'm going to recommend to you in closing is that you physically post your source of business chart somewhere where it's visible to you and to other people. So if you have a home office, or if you have an office at work, you want to post your source of business chart there. The other thing that you want to do, and this is very, very important for you and for your broker, you want to set an appointment with your broker. And, it's the holidays, so give them some latitude on time. Sorry about the noise. I just had to move my headset. Share it with your broker. And when you sit down with them, don't just gloss over it, buddy. Go in and say, John, you've been a great broker to me. I love working here. I love what you're doing with all these new additions of all these cool things that are happening around here. I think this brokerage is great. But I need a favor from you, Mr. Ranville. I need you to know what I'm trying to accomplish in 2016 and to, at some level, be my accountability partner. So I don't know if you can spare 10 minutes once a month or if you can spare 10 minutes once a quarter, but I would very much like to feel some accountability from you as my broker. And I want to show you my source of business chart that I'm trying to achieve in 2016 so that you can, in fact, help me hold myself accountable. Now, there's a real litmus test in there because there's an old saying, don't BS a BSer. Don't lie to a liar. Don't lie to yourself. Don't put together this fancy source of business chart and all this effort in business planning for the month of December and then pretend that you have conviction about it. If you share it with your broker, why don't you make them a little side wager? Say, I want to go on a cruise in February 2017. And if I hit all my goals, I'm going to send myself on a cruise in February of 2017. It's going to cost me about $1,500 for the tickets and then the travel and blah, blah, blah. If I don't hit my goals, John Ranville, I'm going to send you on that cruise. I'm going to spend $1,500 of my own money to send you on a cruise because I didn't hit my goals. Now, some of you are going, Russ, you're silly. But those types of bets are what called gut checks. You know what a gut check is? The bell just rang. It's time to go into the ring, Ronda Rousey. Put up or shut up. This girl's swinging too. You can't go into the ring without a serious gut check because someone's going to pop you. Mike Tyson, you said everybody's got a plan until they get hit. Everybody's got a business plan until they run into some adversity. Everybody's got a business plan until something else comes up. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit with some adversity. So share that plan with your spouse, but do it in a meaningful way. Say, hey, honey, I've been in the real estate business for 3 years now, but 2016 is going to be different. I made a business plan in December because I was on Associate Works, and Annie Mac sponsored this program, and this loudmouth came on and yelled at me for 4 hours over the course of the month of December, and I decided that I'm actually going to commit to a source of business chart in December 2015 so that I do something better in 2016. Honey, we want to plan a vacation for the summer. We want to have a great holiday next year. We want to make sure that we have money set aside for college for our kid, and we want to make sure that we have retirement planning. And I want you to hold me accountable to what I'm telling you right now. Whoa, Russ, you want my spouse to hold me accountable? No, I want everybody to hold you accountable. I want everybody in your life to know that you said you were going to do something, so that when you don't do it, you feel like a fool, that you feel embarrassed. Yeah, that's called accountability. And update that post on your source of business chart every time you do a closing, and you will feel the pride start to swell up in you. Well up in you that you are actually committed. You're doing it every day, every month, every quarter, all year long. You're keeping your commitments to what you made to yourself first, to the public, to your broker, to your spouse, and most importantly maybe to your children if you have any. Because you want to know the worst feeling in the world in residential real estate? When that Christmas tree don't have no presents under it because daddy didn't do his job? When mama was supposed to bring in the extra bacon so that we could go on vacation this summer? When mama was supposed to bring in the extra bacon to pad the retirement account a little bit, but now we're getting closer and closer to retirement and we don't have what we hoped to have? Okay? I truly love the personal and professional development side of this real estate business because I've watched some zeros turn into heroes. I've watched some single moms that were depending on child support from their deadbeat dads and they weren't getting it. I've watched some people who are involved in unsavory business opportunities transition to legitimate business opportunities because they applied themselves. I've watched some people get laid off from crummy jobs where they were making 50, 60 salary and then reproduce 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 in residential real estate. I've watched some people that were close to retirement say, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then they went to work and made $80,000 or $100,000 a year. So I know that you can get what you want out of the residential real estate in 2016, but you've got to apply yourself differently. If you want to get what other people are getting, you've got to do what other people are doing. You can't sit back. Nobody's going to hand it to you in residential real estate. It is always my honor and privilege to have any level of leadership that you allow for us to have with you. And I couldn't do any of it without the AnnieMac Nation and the Workaholic Army behind us. AnnieMac Home Mortgage is licensed in all 50 states now. I think maybe one or two they're not. And they've got feet on the street to serve you in almost every nook and cranny of the United States now. They're a $2 billion a year mortgage lender, one of the top mortgage lenders in the country. They got better products, better pricing, better service than almost any other lender that I've ever come in contact with. I'm very, very proud to be a part of this great organization. And I've said to Joe P., Ryan Cuby, Paul Zinn, Jimmy DeLay, and all of the regional management at Christine Beckwith and Vincent Gui that if I could buy stock in any mortgage lender in the country, that I would personally buy stock in AnnieMac Home Mortgage because the way they do things is entrepreneurial. It's customer service oriented, and I'm very, very proud to recommend you to AnnieMac Home Mortgage. So hopefully you'll reach out to AnnieMac Home Mortgage for a pre-qualification or a loan application because of what we did together today. If you didn't like it, I apologize. If you did appreciate it, say thank you on the bottom in the text chat and go to the testimonial tree, write something nice down because it sure helps us tell the story about what we're doing. Good luck on the 2016 calendar year. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year. Probably won't be talking to you between now and the new year, but thanks so much for the whole time that we've spent together over the 2016 calendar year. And I wish you personal responsibility. I don't wish you luck. I wish you personal responsibility. Thank you very, very much.